Welcome back to the Severe Setup, everybody. O'Neill Harry Powell in your eyes, in your ears. And we've got an abundance of MMA action to talk about this weekend. Lots and lots of action. Not every single fight we're gonna pick and choose a few from the UFC Vegas 90 card, headlined by one Brendan Allen versus Chris Curtis. Obviously take a look at big Cage Warriors Dublin card, which will be taking place right before that UFC card. And right before both of those cards, we've got some PFL action. We're going to take a look at one fight in particular on that card as well. Harry, how are you? A feast of MMA action, like I said, last weekend and even some this weekend as well. We're getting fairly hot and heavy now, aren't we, when it comes to the promotions bringing out all of these cards?
We are. The days are getting longer. The sun is beginning to shine, and the MMA feasts are rolling. And so here we are. I think we have a fantastic Cage Warriors Dublin card to break down. We have a pretty average UFC card, and then there is a certain fight that we'll talk about, as you've mentioned, on PFL. Just before we dive in, I think we should just say again, and I know we say this all the time, and we do a good job of giving flowers when they're deserved, but Cage Warriors are without a doubt, from a production standpoint, from a sort of from a guiding fighter standpoint, they have been vocal about their pay structure, and they've been vocal about what they can and can't pay fighters. But in terms of a regional promotion, knowing its place, maximizing its position, and delivering results, there's nothing like Cage Warriors. Like, there's absolutely nothing like Cage Warriors. And this Dublin card shows you, I think, everything you need to know. We have guys making their pro debuts. We have ladies making their pro debuts. We have massive names like Paul Hughes. We have title fights coming to Ireland. Like, Cage Warriors know what they are doing, and they do it well. Fair play to them.
Absolutely fair play to them. Everything from the production to the commentary team. I mean, Josh Palmer's and Brad Wharton, their commentary on the boogie choke last weekend was sensational, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more to cheer and to commentate on. Maybe we'll even hear a bit of Redzer in the booth as well coming into this weekend's action. Let's stop. Look, what you said, the sun is shining, the weather's getting better, the days are getting longer, but we're still in the UFC Apex, baby. And Brendan Allen versus Chris Curtis is the headliner this weekend in the 185-pound division. Another middleweight main event in the main event of the UFC Apex. I fucked that up, but whatever. Brendan Allen, Chris Curtis, what are your thoughts, Harry?
Look, I think Brendan Allen, since the first time that these guys fought, he has gone on a demonstrable win streak. I'm just counting it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6-fight win streak. 5 finishes. The only person he didn't finish was Jacob Malkoun, which that's interesting. Some names like Paul Craig, some names like Bruno Silva, some names like Andre Muniz in his last 3. It really feels like Brendan Allen has come of age in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, and he has started to show that in his performances. Chris Curtis is a very, very good veteran test again for him. I think he serves a similar purpose that he did previously. Brendan Allen is much, much, much more confident in his game plan. He's much more confident in his timing. I think he's far less hesitant when it comes to finishes. He's able to read those situations very well. What we know and what we saw against Jack Hermansson is his scrambling ability is fantastic. Some of his control positions are fantastic. And he knows how to submit, and he knows how to finish fights via ground and pound too. And I mean that in terms of when he finds those finishes, he knows how to chase them down properly rather than just overexert himself and gassing himself out as we had seen in previous fights. I think for Chris Curtis, this is another chance to sort of stem the flow of another up-and-coming rising prospect. I don't know necessarily what this does for Chris Curtis. Like, I don't think it vaults him into a massive fight. I don't think it vaults him into something insane, but it probably keeps him in and around the same stasis that he's in. But if Brendan Allen goes out there and beats Chris Curtis, he turns around and he says, look, in my last 7 fights, I've had 1 loss to Chris Curtis. I've just turned it around. I've now made it 7-1 in my last 8. I want insert massive name. Right? Is it Sean Strickland? Is it Paulo Costa? Is it, enter the name? That's who he's going to be calling for. And so it's a massive, massive fight for Brendan Allen.
And in terms of like obviously fights falling out, Harry, Marvin Vettori was the original opponent for Brendan Allen. Not too much of an adjustment coming in here. Look, obviously you'll have certain tendencies that Vettori will have that Curtis wouldn't have, but you've got two guys with built of similar ilk where they want to keep the fight standing, they want to move forward and throw combinations. So it'll be something, you know, that Brendan Allen will not have to have changed up his game plan all too much with the change in opponent in Chris Curtis. Plus, you got the added ingredient, as you said, you know, he gets the chance to rectify that loss when they both fought back in 2021. Curtis did finish him with punches and knees in round 2. So, you know, I think that was the loss that sparked this big long win streak for Brendan Allen. And I think the way everything kind of worked out for him kind of worked out pretty well in terms of, you know, losing his opponent in Vettori originally, where he must have been disappointed about. But I'm sure when this was dangled over him, he would have picked it up with both hands, eh?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, a UFC main event is something you don't sniff at, regardless of where it is. There's a big spotlight, lots of media attention, all of these sorts of things. Like you've already mentioned from a stylistic perspective, Chris Curtis is a shorter man, but is very similar in that both him and Vettori are very defensively sound in their boxing. They both don't overexert themselves too much. I would say Chris Curtis is maybe slightly quicker than Marvin Vettori, but both, as you say, want to keep it standing. They certainly don't want to be on their back for significant periods of time, and they're both going to give you similar sorts of reads on the feet in terms of their straight shots, straight boxing. I think the only difference would be that Chris Curtis is less willing to stick to a game plan, as we know Marvin Vettori is super willing to stick to a game plan. So yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, a fight's a fight for somebody like Brendan Allen, and a fight of this magnitude in terms of being in the main event and all these sorts of things. You just take it, you run with it, and you beat the man in front of you.
100%. Co-main event, Alexander Hernandez versus Damon Jackson. We're not stopping on that. We are stopping on the fight between Morgan Chharrire versus Shepe Mariscal. I'm really looking forward to this one. Obviously, to see the last pirate back in there again. He is looking to create his second win inside the UFC octagon after beating Manolo Cecchini at the Paris card last year. Coming in against Shepe, you know, good opponent, but another winnable fight for him here. You know, that being said, Shepe is coming in here on a 5-fight win streak. He had picked up a win back in 2022 in Cage Warriors himself before moving to Combatche Global LFA, before making the jump over to the UFC with wins over Trevor Peek and Jack Jenkins in his last fight. He has a tough one here against Morgan Chapa. You know, we kind of spoke about this fight a little bit, Harry, off camera, in terms of, you know, maybe the UFC seeing some star potential in Chapa and giving him the right matchups to kind of complement that star quality and build him towards maybe a couple of other bigger fights.
Definitely. Mariscal is somebody that wants to stand and bang. He was in one of the craziest fights that we've seen in a long time against Trevor Peek, where Peek is just horrendous, but just wouldn't go anywhere. And Mariscal managed to beat the brakes off him. Jack Jenkins, that was a much closer fight, but Jack Jenkins obviously broke his arm in that fight, and that was very unfortunate. Here against Chapa, I think what they are doing is they are building a resume for Chapa that they can then sell, whether it's a Paris card, a London card, whatever it is. Mariscal's somebody that will stand. He does overexert himself slightly on the right hand. He leans forward a little when he's throwing those shots. Chharrire has lovely knees. He has lovely uppercuts. Some of his head movement is good. He's got crisp boxing fundamentals, and he can grapple too. And so it should be a nice showcase for Chharrire to come out and again remind us of the skill set that he has. Mariscal's tough though, and Chharrire will need to be on his P's and Q's, and if he's not, then there will be significant problems for him. But I just don't see it in this one. I think Chharrire is too good, too quick, hits too hard for Mariscal.
Yeah, I definitely would tend to agree. One fight down from that, Harry, is Ignacio Bahamondes versus Christian Giagos. I think that's one of the fights of the nights on paper for me. Two guys that love throwing some wild shots, some outrageous techniques. And these two boys, I feel, are going to really throw down there on Saturday night, aren't they?
I would bet the house. Don't bet the house, but I would
bet the house. Harry Powell, blame it on him.
Yeah, don't do that. Remortgage your gaff. Put it all down. At the end of the day, Bahamondes is not in a boring fight, and of recent, Chris Giagos is not in a boring fight either. Bahamondes has an insane frame for lightweight. Kicks come from fucking the other side of the cage. He's got big shots on him, big power on him, moves well, can take a shot. And yeah, if this isn't fight of the night, then either one or both of them finish each other very, very quickly, or we've had an absolute screamer somewhere else in the card, because I expect this to be just flames from start to finish.
Absolutely. Running down through the rest of the card really, really quickly. At heavyweight, Lucas Bresky takes on Walter Walker at the heavyweight division. Walker coming in here undefeated, and the brother of Johnny Walker at light heavyweight as well. So interested to see his UFC debut. Trevor Peake, we mentioned him already, takes on Charlie Campbell. I was very impressed with Charlie Campbell in his fight with Alex Reyes last time out, but be interesting to see how he does there. Court McGee versus Alex Morono, two chiseled veterans there, Harry, that are set to throw down in the welterweight division. Norman Dumont versus Jermaine Durandamy. I teetered with the idea of talking about this fight. You're not convinced Jermaine Durandamy is going to make it, are you, Harry?
When she is strapped up, her hair's braided, and she steps inside the octagon and touches hands with Norman Dumont, I'll believe she's fighting. Until then, I need to see it. It's been far, far too long for the Iron Lady to have been out, especially given where she is in her career anyway. I need to see it. I need to see it.
That's fair. Atalang Haley will take on Victor Hugo at 135. Cynthia Calvillo versus Pereira Rodriguez at 115 in the women's division. I tell you, bet the house on that going all 3 rounds. John Matsumo versus Dan Argueta. I like Matsumo undefeated here. Argueta always a tough challenge there, so be interesting there. Cesar Almeida, undefeated Brazilian, coming in at 185 to take on Dylan Budka. Don't know too much about either one of those. Melissa Tonya Mullins from your native land, Harry, comes in to take on Nora Carnole, who is a 7-1 French fighter in the women's 135-pound division. Do we know anything much about Melissa Tonya Mullins at all, Harry?
We do. I know her grappling coach. She's been getting a lot of work in with him specifically, as supposedly been coming on leaps and bounds. She's a big lady for the division. Very much a voluminous striker. She can do a bit of the grappling here and there and everywhere. So yeah, fair play to her. Not I wouldn't expect her to set the world on fire, but she came through the Den White Contender Series, and yeah, fair play to her.
Yep, fair play is right, and fair play, as we said, to Cage Warriors as we move on to the Dublin card. Brilliant card. James Sheehan against Daniel Konrad in the main event. Big fight for James Sheehan. We followed James the whole way up along through his career so far, Harry. Look at obviously coming out, getting this title shot off the back of one win, but definitely has paid his dues in the yellow gloves and in his professional career to deserve an opportunity like this. Coming in against a tricky opponent in Konrad. Big, heavy power in his hands. Tricky enough on the mat as well. And this is shaping up to be a real good one, and is going to be a solid main event in the RDS. What's your thoughts?
So I think just before we dive into the nuts and bolts of the fight, I just need to have a quick conversation about James Sheehan and his record, right? You don't make a debut against Matt fucking Bonner, right? In 2017, Matt Bonner, that is. It's not Matt Bonner of whenever. That's Matt Bonner right now. A good fighter. You then go on in your third fight, right? Your Cage Warriors full debut, and you fight Ian fucking Machado Gary. Right?
Crazy.
And even then, people knew who Ian Gary was. People knew who James Sheehan was. But at the time, if you go back and have a listen to the podcasts that Shawnee put out on the big podcast, you will notice that we said then both of these fighters are absolutely brilliant. Both of these fighters are going to have a long and storied mixed martial arts career. James Sheehan then goes to Oban Elliott, I should say, and that's his next fight. Oban Elliott, his next loss now being in the UFC. He's got wins over O'Neill Brown. We've seen O'Neill Brown go on to do good things. Jamie Richardson has fought for titles. And look, he's now here. His skill set is fantastic. there are holes in his game, as there is with everyone else. But at 7-3, that's not your average 7-3. It's just not your average 7-3. Coming in here against Konrad, I think Konrad, as you say, big power, and that has sort of been a problem for James Sheehan in the past. I think the James Sheehan that will come in and see, he's going to be well aware and well prepped for that power. I do think Sheehan's step-in elbows, Sheehan's low kicks, some of the head movement, some of the footwork that we have seen in previous fights can pay dividends in this one. And I suspect Sheehan will want to keep this on the feet for as long as possible. And so we'll see what improvements he's made there. But over and all, it's a fantastic fight and a fantastic opportunity for him too.
Yeah, it definitely is as well. It'd be a great chance to see a fighter going back with the World Championship to Team Rhino, long overdue, and they've been putting together. We've got some more talent, of course, from Team Rhino on the card that we will talk about in just a minute. One last question for you about the main event. We talk about Daniel Konrad, a fighter that James Sheehan has been in there against. Harry was O'Neill Brown, and I think he kind of would liken that style of fight to this fight, where he's got to be super careful early days, I think, against a guy like Konrad, who does carry some big power in his hands. But we've seen him and what he can do against that type of style when he took out O'Neill Brown or won a decision against him. Obviously, with Konrad, he does prove difficult on the mat as well, but it was a good blueprint, I think, for what James Sheehan kind of needs to come out here and do against Konrad in the main event. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I think for James Sheehan, I actually think a 5-round fight would have suited him more in this specific matchup. 3 rounds is what's scheduled on Topology.
Yeah.
Which I think is uncommon because more often than not, Cage Warriors usually switch to 5-round fights
That's weird.
Now, maybe that's something that's been stipulated between the two. Maybe Topology has got its information wrong. Apologies, Sean. Sorry. Sherdog, not as good as Topology. Sorry. But I would think that a 5-round fight would favor Sheehan here. If it is a 3-round fight, then he needs to work the body quickly in the first round, needs to obviously keep it standing as much as possible, try and hide those low kicks behind some jabs. But as the fight wears on, as we see with O'Neill Brown, he has a tendency to slow down. And I think for somebody like Konrad, if he's not able to land the big power early, if he's not able to get the takedowns early, you can start to strip away some of the life and soul of fighters as you do that. And I think for James Sheehan, if he's in with Team Rhino, they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly the type. They've got the types of bodies that can emulate that sort of style. And just a massive opportunity. Massive opportunity, frankly, for both fighters. A welterweight title in Cage Warriors really, really means something. And I think if James goes and wins it here, then he could be in the near future moving on to bigger and better things.
Indeed, he could. We have tried to set up Paul Hughes with fighters in the UFC for the last number of years. For the last year, for sure, anyway, on the balance breakdown.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened. He's coming in here against Edgar Escarrega from Mexico. Tough fella. I think I don't want to disparage his skills as much as, I want to kind of compliment Paul Hughes' skills here, because I think this guy is a tough guy, but I do think that Paul Hughes will kind of dispose of him relatively easy. When I checked up, Escarrega doesn't have a lot of output, is very defensively sound, looks for opportunities to try and take the fight down, is a solid grappler. Very, very heavy on his lead leg. I'm very curious to see if Paul Hughes chooses to chew that up. But it's a huge, huge opportunity here for Hughes to kind of, stamp his authority on his Cage Warriors career with another impressive finish. Heard him talking to PT on the Crack. He'll be talking to us on the El Triangle as well. Check that out over on SevereMMA if you have not already. He is very adamant that he does not want to go in here and win this fight. He needs to go in here and make a statement. He will become a free agent after this fight. Your thoughts on it, Harry?
So I'll start at the easiest part, which is the free agency. Obviously, this world is changing. The MMA world is changing right before our eyes. But I, for one, would love to see Paul Hughes don the UFC gloves. I would not love to see him in Reebok shorts, but sure, these things happen in MMA. I just think that whether it's 145 or 155, yeah, Venom shorts. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. That's how fucking old I am.
That's the last time that you enjoyed an MMA fight in the UFC, is it?
Whether he dons whether he gets to 145 or 155 and he settles there is sort of in the future. But there are so many amazing fights for Paul Hughes' skill set, and the thing that I struggle with the most is that the longer that we wait, the older that he gets and the more damage he takes, whether that's in training or fights or whatever. And so the less that we're going to see Paul Hughes at his absolute apex of potential. And that, I think, is a significant crying shame. Now, in terms of the fight itself, Ian Dean, as always, will know what he's doing here. He brings in a tough Mexican fighter, somebody that, as you say, leads quite heavy on the lead leg. I saw the same thing. Not a huge amount of output. That seems and sounds to me like Paul Hughes is going to work up a rhythm very, very quickly. And when he does, it is so, so hard to change Paul Hughes's rhythm. And so I can see that Hughes will either get this done on the feet if he wants it, or he starts to drag Edgar down to the mat, starts to beat him up and starts to look for either rear naked chokes or these sorts of things. But I believe Paul Hughes when he says that he needs to make a statement here. I think he understands that this is his final Cage Warriors performance. I think he understands that what happens here will be demonstrable to which organizations are in the bag for him, or at least what sort of contract he'd be looking at when these sorts of organizations come to speak to him, because as we've talked about before, MMA is very much a what have you done for me lately type thing. So if he goes out and gets an amazing knockout or an amazing submission, whatever it is, then it's very, very easy for him to say, well, this is what I've done for you lately. How much are you willing to pay me? You know?
Yeah, exactly. I truly believe you're going to want to get people talking with his performance in Dublin, and look, it's a great opportunity for anyone to get a good up close and personal look at Paul Hughes heading into that fight. There's a couple of other fights I'd like to touch on the card. Ireland versus Wales is happening once or twice on the card. The first one I'm going to stop on is Mhandu versus Rory Evans. Harry. Rory Evans 6-6 record, but he's a tough cookie and he's a good test for Mhandu coming in here as well. Obviously, hadn't had the best run of form lately, picked up good wins over Wesley Maya and other guys like that. And he'll prove a good test here for Mhandu, who looked really good last year and looks to build upon that success this year. And this is a great fight for him to do so.
I agree. Rory Evans is dogged, he's tough, he's rugged, and he can grapple. And so for Mhandu, the question is, can he keep Rory Evans off him? Can he gain the respect of Rory Evans? Can he damage him enough to make him shoot from further out? Can he damage him enough to make Rory Evans hesitant on the feet? Because if he's not, and if he can't, then Rory Evans will keep coming and keep coming and keep coming for 3 rounds. And that is a very, very, very tough prospect for any fighter, frankly. And so I'm interested to see how Taka approaches this fight. I'm very interested to see how much that takedown defense is going to be tested. If he does get taken down, what does that mean on the ground? What does he look like on the ground? What do we see from Mhandu in terms of a get-up game against somebody that is more likely to hold you and keep you in those controlling positions? But over and back, I think, again, for Rory Evans, this is 6-6 again, is not demonstrable of his skill. I think he's a far better fighter than that. But this is a great test at the right time for Mhandu, as always with Cage Warriors.
Yeah, 100%. Another Ireland versus Wales fight, and one to me that's like one of the fights that I'm most looking forward to on this card as well, Harry, is the fight between Solomon Simon versus Ewan Mackenzie. Both undefeated, as Quail Shitabara would say. Someone's has got to go in this one. And this is a real mouthwatering one. Obviously, Solomon Simon coming from Team Rhino Waterford and Team Rhino headquarters as well. Solid prospect that we followed throughout his amateur career and has been ever progressing each time that we've seen him in there in the cage as well. Same with Ewan Mackenzie, who's a serious prospect coming from your neck of the woods as well. This is a great, fantastic fight. And I'd say, I said it on the Owl Triangle, I'll say it here again. This is Ian Dean working his magic again.
It is. And like this is and I don't mean to overblow this because I don't think either fighter may be of the same ilk, but this is Ian Gary versus James Sheehan 2.0, right? Where
you're talking,
two fighters at the very, very, very start of their career, long storied amateur careers for both of them. So both of them are absolutely at their professional level coming in. I think both fighters have very, very, very strong skill sets. And I'm most interested, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm most interested in Solomon Simon's approach to this specific fight. I think we've seen more versatility from him, and I'm more interested in how he approaches the Ewan Mackenzie puzzle. But Ewan Mackenzie is a very, very, very strong fighter as well. And as you've said, Ian Dean puts together these sort of 50-50 matchups, especially early in these fighters' pro careers, because as they've said, that when you get to Cage Warriors, you'll be matched accordingly to prove whether you are worthy of being pushed up into those upper echelons. And I think we'll find out early who, out of either Solomon Simon or Ewan Mackenzie, which one is more ready to be pushed into the upper echelons of the Cage Warriors roster.
Indeed. I'll open the floor to you, Harry. Any other fights that you're looking forward to, or fighters that you're looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, so I'm always interested in a Ger Harris fight. And I think Jamie Abbott Bissett making his pro MMA debut is going to be fun as well. And I think Ben Petrus-Kelly, who's had a sort of a rocky start to his pro MMA career, he's now been put in with Dara Ward, and that's a tough fight as well. But just over all of it, there's just bangers.
Unbelievable. Like, I mean, with Dara Ward, he's coming in here very, very highly touted as well from the Honey Badger Academy, also with Team KF as well. A storied amateur career, has been on a serious run now. Want to mention Adam Shelley's fight is off, unfortunately. Ryan Shelley will go in and take on Callum Parker, another guy that we should be keeping an eye on. Kieran Brady coming in here. He's put on a serious show in the amateur ranks, picking up wins over Ross Queerney, Jordan Bradshaw, Dale Sheridan, Jack Corrin, a number of occasions as well. I want to give a shout out also Decky McAleen, always in tough fight he has, but a very, very exciting fighter. Jordan O'Neill's fight has fallen through at the recording of this. Hopefully something gets figured out for him. And I'll finish last but not least with Emer Darcy. Really, really excited to see her in action. She put in a savage year at the amateur ranks last year, picking up 3 wins and 1 loss. Well, actually, no, she fought 5 times actually. For 6 times, 4 wins. Every time I look at it, keeps getting 1 more. 4 wins and 2, but very good striker. Very exciting to see Emer. Sinead Newland also fighting as well. Good to see women back in the Cage Warriors cage as well, to be honest. So that kind of wraps up. We'll break down that card, and as you mentioned, Jamie Abbott Bissett, good prospect as well, along others with Ger Harris as well. So, and Matthew Elliott. I feel like I have to name them all because I might get given out to if I don't name everybody. So there you go. Everyone was named. I'm looking forward to everybody's fight. I'm also looking forward to the fight that's happening in the PFL on Thursday night, Harry. And that fight is Dakota Ditcheva, who is coming in to make her US debut for the PFL against Lisa Mauldin. What do you think of Dakota Ditcheva? What do you think of the route that she's got to get here and the route that she's choosing to go? I think it's a very, very smart one, really. Do you?
I do. I mean, Ditcheva is obviously coming from a storied martial arts background. She comes from a family of martial artists. This is not something that, she sort of waltzed on into at 10-0, but she is a very, very serious prospect. She is one of the poster women, I guess, poster people, I suppose, fighters of the European series for the PFL. And look, if they decide to put in a women's 125-pound tournament again, then she's right in with a chance of winning £1 million. And after you win £1 million, whatever happens. I think she would be very, very, very interesting in the women's 125-pound division in the UFC right now. But if you're Dakota Ditcheva, you keep picking up wins, you keep picking up highlight reel finishes, you keep absolutely blasting these women out of your cage. You continue to hone your craft, you continue to get better, and then you just see where you go. Like Ditcheva is still so young in her career, both at 10-0 and at only 25 years of age. Like I say, a storied kickboxer already, but at 25 there's still so much time for growth in mixed martial arts. She has her head on her shoulders. You can tell that in the way that she interviews pre-fight and post-fight. And I just think the sky's the limit. The sky is the absolute limit for Dakota Ditcheva.
Well, what you had is, look, at complete domination in the European series. That's totally fine by me. You're getting your experience, you're realizing your season, you're making progress in between camps. But what we have here with the PFL regular season is a solid bracket where we've got some big tests. Let me break it down for you for a second. Chelsea Hackett, Jenna Bishop also competing in the 125-pound division. We also got Kana Watanabe versus Shanna Young. We've got a surprising addition. Talia Santos is in the PFL. She's taken on Ilaria Joanne. Liz Carmouche versus Juliana Velasquez, obviously another big fight as well. So, I mean, lots and lots of interesting names there for Dakota Ditcheva to sink her teeth in, Harry. Overall, when you look at the level of competition that's in there, is the level of expectation for you for Ditcheva to go quite a long way in this tournament, if not even win it out altogether?
Definitely. I think the toughest tests there are obviously Liz Carmouche, in that she is a really good grappler. And I think if you're trying to make styles versus fights, Ditcheva versus Carmouche is a really interesting one. I think Talia Santos, she can do some grappling, right, as we saw against Valentina Shevchenko, but I think her realm of happiness is in the striking, and so that's a high level matchup in the striking between Ditcheva and Talia Santos. But the other interesting dark horse there is Jenna Bishop, obviously a multiple time black belt world champion in the gi and without the gi, and so again, whilst the striking may be nowhere near the level that it would need to be in order to cause somebody like Ditcheva problems, if Jenna Bishop gets anywhere close to grounding you, the submission offense, the submission attacks are obviously very potent and very prevalent. Now, Jenna Bishop has to deal with her own problems, right? She has Chelsea Hackett in front of her and the other fighters that are in that bracket. But yeah, I think Ditcheva will be looking at this sort of a bracket, looking at some of the names, watching some of the fighters, looking at some of the skill sets, and thinking that she can go pretty far here. And I think so too.
Yeah, I do too, and I was really impressed when the lads were speaking with her in the last Dublin fight, where she was saying that a lot of people thought that she'd do well in the women's 125-pound in the UFC, and when she was presented that question, she was like, "No, I don't want to go there yet. I want this, and this is the descent up of my career." And she's taken full control of it, and I give her a lot of credit for that. And I think, look, there is life in the UFC after you fight in the PFL. At a time we might not have said that, maybe with a couple of Bellator fighters, but times are changing, as that man has said right across from me, and there'll be plenty time a changing, there'll be plenty punches exchanging, and there'll be plenty of exciting moments this weekend with all the MMA action. We'll be back to break it all down next Tuesday on The Balance Breakdown, at BJJ_Harry Powell, at O'Neill MMA. We'll chat to you